What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, like, comment, let us know what you think about the episode. If there's any questions you have for our guest or an entirely different topic guest that you'd like to have covered, we're always checking comments on YouTube. Love to hear from you guys and be able to take the things that you guys want to hear about and then be able to make them onto future episodes. Today, I'm going to be joined by a gentleman named Kevin, and he's got an equipment repair business. I was really excited to chat with him, not just about his business, but he's an IDI enthusiast, and I've seen the comments on YouTube for a really long time. You guys wanted to hear more about them, so he's going to walk us through this truck, how he did an engine swap, transmission swap on it, put a turbo kit on it, why he likes it as a truck that's used every single day, and it's going to be really cool to chat with him about that whole process. Before we get to it, though, I want to remind you our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 20% off site-wide code for you. Use code 23diesel20 at kershaw.kaiusa.com. It's a great way to save 20% off on some really cool gear. So if you need a knife for hunting, fishing, EDC, something to use around the job site, throw in a glove box, they've definitely got you covered. They've had a bunch of new releases this year. One of the most recent is the Duralock models, which is it's a really nice knife. I've got actually a couple of them myself, and the opening mechanism is super smooth. Keeps your fingers away from the blade when you open and close it. And they have a bunch of different choices for blade shape, length. They're all the blades are made out of D2 steel. There's different handle material choices, designs. So definitely head on over, check them out if you're in the market. Use code 23diesel20 for 20% off site-wide. All right, let's get to today's podcast with Kevin, chatting with him about his equipment business, how he got started, how he grew it, and then also about his passion for IDIs. Kevin, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. I'm excited to chat with you today about a lot of different things. One of them is going to be IDIs, which I've wanted to do an episode about them. But then also, your story in business and working on equipment and tons of different things in diesel. I know it's going to be a great chat. So I appreciate you reaching out to us, and look forward to hearing your story, learn more about what you do, and then picking your brain a little bit about IDIs.
What's going on, Patrick, in the Diesel Podcast? How you folks doing?
And it's going to be a great time. I wanted to start. I'm always really fascinated about the background or the interest in diesel. And I think for me, just hearing so many different stories and ways that people have come to love just diesel engines, whether it's in a tractor or heavy equipment or a pickup truck, always really interests me. So where did your passion start for diesels, and then how did it grow into a business?
Well, my interest was it started with my dad. My dad owns a tree business. He owns a pretty good sized business, cutting trees and doing all sorts of stuff. So spend my childhood at 5 years old sitting on the tailgate of my dad's pickup truck, watching him tinker around with chainsaws. And that's pretty much where the whole mechanic side started. And growing up as a kid, always been around him, watching him work on, he had 7.3s, Power Strokes. I was with him when he bought his first 7.3 brand new, actually, as a kid. He has a Peterbilt log truck, just always around machinery and diesel. So that's kind of where it all started. Because I always would hear him, oh my God, this shop costs, charge me this much money to, put a turbo on a truck. And I was like, well, I want to start learning this stuff. And then I went to tech school at a young age and started with lawnmowers. I worked for John Deere, worked for a rental company. And then finally, my dad said, growing up as a kid, he's been in business for almost 40 years. You don't make your real money until you go on your own. So then I think it was 2017, I started my own business, started working on pretty much strictly tree equipment because he had a bunch of tree buddies. Hey, my son's fixing equipment now. Call him. He'll help you out. And I had this old truck behind me, and it had a pickup body on it. And I paid $1,000 for this truck, and it's made me money hand over fist. And it's been a very good, reliable truck for me. Probably one of the best trucks I've owned. And it's a 6.9. It was originally a 6.9 IDI. It's a 1986, and it had a C6 in it. But we can get talking about that here in a little while.
Oh, I got a bunch of questions about that truck and the conversion and everything that you did. Now, when you first started out, and you had some other companies around you that they had trucks that needed to be worked on, how did you? Well, because I'm thinking about this question because I get a lot of them from younger people who are very mechanical. They love working on things. They love diesel, and they think about going out on their own one day. They're maybe not quite ready yet, but one of the questions asked me is, well, how do I grow it, or how do I find the work? And so I wanted to ask you about like your area, the businesses that are around you, the economy around you. How how did that help you grow when you were just starting out on your own, making a name for yourself and getting a pipeline of work?
Well, where I'm at, I'm close to Philadelphia. I'm about an hour from Philly in Pennsylvania. And in my area, there's a lot of tree guys, landscapers, roofing guys, just general contractors. There's just, there's work everywhere. And actually was word of mouth with my dad, him knowing a bunch of tree guys. Hey, my son's looking for, work. He's really good with tree equipment, trucks, and that was the first start. Then the second thing was my other uncle. He's really good with like GoDaddy and making websites. So he made me a website. And I'll tell you what, ever since that website, it just blossomed. I mean, just now I got it's three guys that work for me. I mean, I got 9 trucks now. I got 5 service trucks. I got tow trucks. I got all sorts of equipment. And I cover almost a 3 to 4 hour radius of where my shop is. I mean, we
Wow.
cover some ground. I'm a mobile mechanic, but I got a shop, and we work on anything from a pickup truck to a van, all the way up to trucks, Class 8 trucks and trailers and excavators and all sorts of diesel equipment, we'll say.
What's really interesting about that is I think way back, in my life, to how you would find people, either people in the trades or, somebody to work on something. It was very much word of mouth. And then, of course, over time with the internet, and we all have smartphones in our pockets that can do anything. We look for that website. We Google whatever it is we're looking for, a zip code, a city, and find it. With the website that you had built, how did it take it to the next level? Was it more people? I'm sure more people being able to find you, but maybe people looking for your specific services you were now able to find an hour and a half away, 10 minutes away, just be able to find more of the people that would need the services you provide.
The big key was having somebody that was familiar with how websites work. And that was what my uncle did. I mean, he made me a website on GoDaddy, and I'm actually in the process, thanks to your podcast. Dieselmatic is actually redoing my website as we speak. I know you
Okay,
had
cool.
Dieselmatic on the podcast. I use Full Bay. I've been using them now for 3 years. Some guys might know this, some guys might not. Full Bay is an app. Well, it's not really an app, it's a website that you could do all your logging and paperwork and all that stuff on. And they offer credit card, and they offered the website years ago. So they took it over about 3 years ago. And just the way Google works is you got to put keywords in. Like it takes a lot. I mean, it took a lot of years. I mean, for example, I do work for a big tree company, and they found me through Google. They were close to my location, and one job that was a $1,500 job that I did for them about 3.5 years ago. Now they're my top customer, and I'm probably billing them guys almost up to $30,000 a week.
Wow.
And they give me work year round. And it was just one job through Google that got me that kind of link. And sometimes that's what it takes for a small business.
That
I
that's
mean,
that's really good advice, because I've had that question. People have asked me, um, how do I find or build that kind of relationship with places? And I'm glad you brought that up, because you think of a $1,500 job as one job 3.5 years ago, but they were able to connect with you, and then from there, you could build the relationship and be able to grow it into something.
yeah, now I got almost 200 pieces of equipment for this company all the way across, like I said, 2 to 3 hours away from my shop that I'm working for that. I mean, and they give me work. I mean, it's all year round. And I mean, the big key is, now that I see with Dieselmatic, just working with them guys, and I preach it to somebody, go with somebody like Dieselmatic. Yes, it's going to cost you money, but you got to spend money to make money. That's another line my dad always would say. And like I said, that one $1,500 job got me all this work, and I'm set now.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that from a lot of different content creators that I follow, or, people that I look to learn from in other types of industries. They say that you never know what that one relationship or that one return call or that one, seemingly small job that you take what it can blossom into. And I think that's really key for younger people to
Yeah.
think about as they get into it. I wanted to ask you a question kind of larger about doing repairs, maintenance, things like that on a ton of different types of applications. How has it changed from when you started 7 years ago to now? Because we on the podcast talk a lot about pickup trucks. So I'm talking about, a 94 12 valve or an 0173. But then we're also talking about a 2023 Power Stroke or Duramax or Cummins, and they're vastly different with the electronics, the diagnostics, everything that goes into them. What's it like on the equipment side?
It's pretty much the same thing as it is on the pickup side. You need scanners for some of these pieces of equipment. I mean, the key is just if you have a good mechanical mindset and can figure things out, which some people do, some people don't, that helps a lot too. I mean, I've worked on stuff, all the way from 1960s farm tractors all the way up to brand new, wood chippers that are 2023. I mean, it's just the key is to know people that could potentially help you out if you get in a bind, which I know a lot of people in my area. And obviously one of them, like I said, was Tommy Hassler. He's helped me out a lot over the years on pickup truck stuff. But I mean, I know a bunch of dealers. I mean, it took me a while, I guess, to build up a friendship with a lot of different people that could help me out if I got in a pinch, And like you said, with the emissions, all these newer trucks are having emissions. It's the same in the equipment side. I mean, I got brand new wood chippers that got catalytic converters on them, and they never had them. They were gas. Some of these are gas, some of these are diesel. Now these diesel chippers are having, DPF and SCR systems, and it's just a lot to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine the network in building not only the business, but then also the future for what you envision for it. The networking is incredibly important, like you mentioned. And I know that can be tough to build, with trust or just finding people or, one of the things is like personality, like myself, like, yeah, I do the podcast, but I'm not naturally extroverted. Like I'm more of an introverted person. So it can be hard to just strike up that conversation or, make that call or do those sorts of things. And like for yourself, was that a struggle? Like, or was it really easy for you to do it?
It was a struggle at first. I mean, like starting off the business, I mean, everybody has, as a small business owner, they're going to say it's a struggle just all across the board with everything between trying to run the business, trying to find good help, trying to find good networking for places to buy parts. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was a struggle, but I pushed through it. My parents were a big help, friends were a big help. And where I'm at today, I never thought I would be this big and phone calling as much and the shop that I'm at. I never thought I would have that. I thought it would just be me and this old pickup truck just driving around fixing equipment.
I think that's what I think that's what inspires people to want to do this, and just chatting with a lot of different people in the aftermarket. There's a tremendous need for skilled labor for the skills like that you have that a lot of people in your industry have. And younger people, they're interested in it the same way. They're sitting on the tailgate of a pickup truck. We're watching our dads or uncles do something, or our older brother. And we have this interest in it. And we think, can we make that a career? Like, can I work in something that I absolutely love versus sitting in a cubicle or something like that and just punching clocking in, clocking out? Like, we don't want to do that. So I always love to talk about this side of it because I know there's a lot of listeners, a lot of people out there that want to do this for a living. And so it's really helpful to be able to chat with somebody like yourself, hear how you build it, how you networked, and how you put it all together.
Yeah, I mean, the big key I tell everybody is treat people fair. Like my dad always says, don't overcharge. You treat people fair, you'll have work the rest of your life. And he's right. I mean, I'm set. I'm 31 years old and I got more work than I know what to do with. And it's year round. It's like this.
Yeah.
And I keep me and my three guys busy all the time. We always got work. I mean, my parking lot's constantly full at my shop and I got road calls everywhere.
That's a really good point as well. And I think there's so much need for it out there. In so many different parts of the country. So I'm excited to see what the future holds and how you're growing this. And the IDI, the truck behind you, I wanted to chat with you about it because I don't know a ton about them. I've had a couple friends that have had them, and times on the podcast. I think you'd mentioned, yeah, I've heard you say we got to do an IDI episode sometime. Is like walk me through it. Walk me through that truck, why you picked it, what it is about that truck that you love. Like I want to understand it. I want to see, why you picked it, and then we'll start to go through how you upgraded it and the things that you did, because I know a lot of people are going to be interested in it.
So it's originally a 1986 F-250 Ford. It had a 6.9 with a C6 automatic. It was an old, ugly work truck. Believe it or not, I traded a Bronco I had for this thing in 2000. I think it was in 14, 15. I forget exactly what year. And back then, I was actually working for John Deere, and I would fix mowers up on the side. I would scrap, and I had the Bronco and I wanted another pickup. At the time, I had a Power Stroke too, and I just wanted another old beater pickup truck. And the truck was actually supposed to be just like, just keep it for a year or two, and then I'll push it down the line. And I just always had a thing for old Fords. I don't know what it was. I liked the look of them. I had a bunch of them over the years. So as the time progressed, I put a lift gate on it, and we were scrapping all the time. It was just a pickup. Then I decided to go on my own, and I put side boxes on the pickup bed, had a job box in the back, and I said, okay, first year of business, I need to put an actual utility bed on this truck. And being a small business owner, just starting off, didn't have a lot of money. I was like, I can't afford, had this truck. I said, let's put her to work. I said, it's been a really reliable truck. Didn't really owe me anything. And I'll tell you what, I've had this truck, I think it's going on 10 years, and it's only let me sit once. And that was 2 years ago over a power steering line. I couldn't get a line, and I had to get it towed. I was always able to make it home, with no brakes. I was using the electric trailer brakes. This truck has been all over with me. It's been a great truck. I always tell everybody with the IDIs are like a 12-valve Cummins. You need one wire to run it, one 12-volt power wire, and you can fix it with duct tape and a screwdriver if you're alongside of the road and get you home. And it's the way it's been. Then probably about 6 years ago when I started the business, we restored it. We put a service bed on it. It was kind of a little of a crappy bed. Made do with it. Then this past winter, we redid the entire truck. Well, to rewind a little bit, the engine blew up about 3 years ago, and I'm a Jasper distributor, so I ordered a brand new reman engine. It was a 7.3 94 turbo IDI. So it's got a Garrett turbo, which Ford offered in 1994 on it. We got a bigger pump that I got from R&D and bigger pump and bigger injectors on it. And then quite a few years ago, I was having problems with the C6, so we converted it to 5-speed manual. We actually put a ZF5 in it. And originally in 86, a lot of old Ford people tell you that would have had a Wood-Warner 4-speed in it. So we put a ZF5 in it. And this past year, we actually redid. We're having problems with the brakes and the rear axle. Put a Super Duty rear axle in the back of it out of a 1994 F Super Duty, which was a 450 back then. We put it's pretty much a four-wheel drive transfer case or four-wheel drive transmission. We put the four-wheel drive transmission, and it's got the heavy-duty parking brake that's on the back of the trans, which a lot of industrial guys and guys that are familiar with those F Super Duties will know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's pretty much driveline-wise is all beefed up to a 350 and stuff and a 450. And the truck goes down the road almost every day, and it makes me money. And I mean, can't complain.
So how difficult was the ZF5 conversion? I've had some people ask me that over the years, and I haven't had any idea how hard it would be to do on an IDI. So you're the perfect person to ask about it.
Well, in this truck, being that it's an older diesel, obviously you don't have no electronics to worry about. There's nothing, So the hardest thing out of the whole swap was actually getting the drive shaft, because I had to go to a custom drive shaft shop and get a drive shaft made. I mean, went to the junkyard, found a steering column out of an 84, which is a bullnose Ford, which is like what this truck is, and put the clutch pedal in and the steering column in. Like, it almost looks factory, besides the fact that it's a 5-speed, not a 4-speed originally.
Very cool.
I mean, we've done, me and my guys, I got a guy that works for me he's a diesel nut, but he's more of like an automotive guy. Like he likes to pick up trucks and likes working on cars and stuff like that. Where the rest of us, we work on the heavy duty stuff. And he's done quite a few swaps for a couple customers of mine. We've done a couple IDIs. I think we did a Power Stroke. I mean, we've done a lot of manual for, automatic versus from going from automatic to manual swaps.
I think that's one of the main things that really draws us to older trucks is the simplicity and I think more freedom that we can have with them, whether they're Ford, GM, Ram. There's just so much that we can do to be able to do those upgrades. Like you think of that truck, you've made it exactly what you wanted with the suspension upgrades, the transmission, the engine, the turbo, everything like that. I think it's a big reason why they're so popular now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got a customer of mine that's not too far from my shop. I had him for quite a few years, and he's got 3 IDIs, and he loves them just because the sole fact that they're simple. There's nothing to them. They break down. You can, like I said, fix them with duct tape and a screwdriver almost. Just kind of like a 12 valve Cummins. They're simple.
Yeah. How hard is finding parts for them? Like maybe not necessarily upgrades, but like for maintenance or just routine things that are just going to happen with time or mileage. Is it hard?
There's some stuff that's hard. There's a guy actually called R&D IDI Performance. He actually makes performance parts for these things. He makes big injectors, turbo kits, all sorts of bizarre stuff. If you ever get time, look at his website. His name's Justin Anderson. He's on Facebook, and he builds some wild stuff for these IDIs. That's all he specializes in, the Ford IDIs. I think he had one and he made like 500 horse out of an IDI, which is incredible out of an engine that only made 145 horse stock.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, it's a pretty big jump is right. I mean, I get a lot of parts from actually Ford's local Ford dealer from me. They still offer like the selector valve. We had to put a selector valve on another customer's truck. I mean, there's some stuff that's obviously obsolete. There's Ray Buck that I get some body parts from. There's Jeff Bronco Graveyard, who has a lot of stuff for these old Fords. Believe it or not, LMC truck was a big help with when we restored this truck. And actually Rock Auto had a lot of, like Rock Auto, you can get the bezels and you can get a lot of stuff from those websites. I mean, obviously it's aftermarket parts, and we all know the quality of aftermarket parts. You got to make it fit, but it's not like you can call Ford and get every part for this truck that's going on, 30, 35 plus years old.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're starting to see it on newer vehicles. I had a couple emails this week with trucks or with vehicles that are maybe 10, 15 years old. They can't get these OEM parts anymore from, Ram or Ford or GM, whichever vehicle they had. And so they're looking for it. And that's why I was really curious about stepping even farther back, what kind of options were there. Cause I think someone that's interested in an older diesel truck and say they say, I want a 7.3 IDI. I know one, they want a turbo kit on it. And then two, it's like, okay, now how can I kind of make it my own or restore it or do, get some of these other things, maybe with the interior or the body and the exterior to be able to put it all together.
I mean, the key is, like I said, with this truck, I would just spend hours on the computer. Okay, I want to buy a bigger injection pump, and that's how I stumbled across this R&D IDI. This is years ago, even before we had all these Facebook pages. I mean, you can go on Facebook, and there's probably 10 pages for IDIs. I mean, you can buy all sorts of parts for these things. I mean, there's still quite a few junkyards, at least here in Pennsylvania, that have a lot of these trucks still in the junkyard. I mean, the key is, like I tell everybody, yes, parts might be hard to find, but you just got to keep looking on the interweb and keep calling people, and that's how I found all the stuff for this thing. I mean, I got quite a few guys in my area that have like junkyards for Super Duties or junkyards for IDIs, and call them all the time. Hey, I need this for a 7.3 Power Stroke. And there's a big parts warehouse. It's called College Truck Parts. And I know Tommy Hassel buys a lot of parts from them. They're about an hour and a half from me. And they got like a 10-acre lot that is just strictly pickup trucks they deal with.
Wow.
And they got a lot of stuff too, from all sorts of even Jeep pickup trucks. They got stuff like some old school stuff up there.
I think when you look at the price of newer vehicles and the complexity of them, and you think about something, you need it to run all the time. You need it to start whether it's winter, summer. You got a big radius that you're covering. Like reliability is the most important thing because I'm sure, you have it down to a science. If that thing's down, how much is it costing, the
Yep.
company and yourself? And so I think going that extra mile, doing that extra research, spending more time to find these things can really benefit someone, especially you think of the purchase price and the money you invested. You're still way ahead of going to a Ford dealer and buying a 2023 F350
Oh,
or F450 or something like that.
Patrick, I'm 31. Like I just told you before we started the podcast, I bought a Freightliner box truck this week. It was a 6.7 Cummins in it, and I paid $10,000. That's the most money I ever spent buying a vehicle was $10,000. Never had a vehicle loan, and I'm 31. I'm a sole believer the old stuff is where it's at. With just because of I work on new trucks all the time with emissions. And like I said, I just bought this 2013 and it's got emissions on it. My buddies are like, "Oh my God, your first truck with emissions on it." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know what to do because I'm always cutting the exhaust off these 7.3s and straight piping them and rolling smoke." And I know Lenny won't approve of me rolling smoke, but this old IDI, she does it, and it's not even tuned up that much. It's just the nature of the
Yeah.
IDI. I tell people.
Oh, yeah, well, that's how the older ones they were so simple. Like I know one of the things is some friends of mine that always look for the early '03 5.9 common rail because it didn't have catalytic converter on it, but you get that '04 and a half model, it does. So they would look towards that, and we go even
Yeah.
farther back. They were just so much simpler. And I think that's a really kind of key part, not just in the enthusiast side and you love the truck, but then also with your business as well, because you're telling us that's what you use, every day to do your job. And so I think a lot of times there can be maybe pressure or we think it's how it goes, but we start a business and we need to go buy the latest truck. We need leather interior. We need to go spend 100,000 plus on this thing. But there can be ways to be incredibly productive, have a reliable vehicle, invest some time, learn some things, and make money with it, and not
Yeah.
have such a huge payment or spend that much money.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of give it a rundown. I got this truck. The other truck, ideally, that is a service truck, is a 94 F Super Duty, which is a 450 with a 7.3 Power Stroke and a 5-speed manual on it. And we got that truck turned up. The truck's 18,000 pounds, and it makes almost 35 pounds of boost out of it. And same thing, it's got 400,000 miles almost on it, and it goes down the road every day to make money. I got a Gas Express Chevy box truck. I mean, I got a couple other 7.3s. I got a tow truck, an OBS Ford tow truck that's a F452 as well. That my guys we did a bunch of performance parts, and that thing makes 35 pounds of boost, and it's a rollback, and it's a tow truck. I mean, just I can't leave nothing alone. I like the old 7.3s. I got a 6.0 Power Stroke too. That was my first one I bought last year that we did some work to it. I mean, it's for the most part, it's stock just because it's got 220,000 miles on it. And I know if I start throwing horsepower out of 6.0 Power Stroke, it's going to do 6.0 Power Stroke things. And I don't want to spend the money on it right now. I mean, it's a good truck.
Yeah. If somebody was looking to get an older Ford and they could find, say a 7.3 turboed IDI or one of the 7.3 Power Strokes. I guess we could include even the OBSs in there, but say like 99 to '03. What would you tell them, not just as an enthusiast, but then also as somebody who works on equipment and engines for a living? Which one may be best, or maybe not best, but what things should they consider, like with upgrades or the availability of parts, to decide between, do I do an IDI or do I get a 7.3 Power Stroke?
I mean, obviously, the 7.3 Power Stroke, I'm sure, as you know, there's more vast variety of injectors and turbos and intercoolers and all sorts of crazy parts you can get for them. I mean, my 173 I have is a 2000, and it's a crew cab. It's got a flatbed on it. It's a dual EF350, and it's got 400,000 miles too on that truck. And thanks to Tommy Hassler, it's got stage 2 injectors, a 66 millimeter turbo that Tommy built me, some crazy tunes that Tommy put on it. And I mean, it makes the hottest tune I think that I saw out of that truck when I was really whooping on it. I saw almost 45 pounds of boost out of that truck. And I mean, I think the Super Duty 7.3 is just because it's full disc brakes. There's us, obviously, if you get one that's manual, it's a 6-speed, or the 4R100 or 4R110 is obviously with the automatics are okay stock, but they have issues, as we all know. I think the 7.3 Super Duties, the 99 from 2003, are probably the best bang for your buck if you were to buy a 7.3 Power Stroke. Obviously, I love the OBSs too, but you're restricted because they're non-intercooled turbo. I mean, they were a smaller turbo. There were smaller injectors. Just there's certain things about an OBS that you can't do to an OBS that you could do to a Super Duty 7.3 in 99 to 2003.
Do you think it would be, say, if somebody thought, hey, I want to do some upgrades in the future, that the 7.3 Super Duty would give them more ability to do that? But if someone's looking for something, make a little bit more power, but it's really about reliability, ease of working on it, something that is, I'd say, is simpler. Is that where the IDI would really shine, especially factoring in cost? Like when I think of older trucks, to me, I kind of think back to late 90s, early 2000s, and it seems like the price of them have just gone way up whenever I see them for any of the big three. And I think you could get into something that still makes, good torque, something that's still reliable, something you can still use, to haul things, put a ton of miles on, work it hard, save a little bit of money and go a little bit older.
I mean, the IDIs, like I tell everybody, they're like it's comparable to like a 12-valve Cummins or a 6.5. You go to Napa and like buy almost every mechanical engine part for this truck and probably not spend more than $1,000 just because they're cheap. They're an old mechanical diesel. You open the hood on this thing, you could almost sit on the rad support and access the entire engine versus a Power Stroke at some of the newer vehicles. I tell people, if you're a young kid, you're starting off, you want a diesel truck, go buy an IDI, because no matter what, as long as you got 12 volts power to that injection pump and good go plugs, she's going to start. That's just my interest if you don't have a lot of money. I mean, my first diesel was actually a 2007 3 Power Stroke. My dad helped me buy it. But then, like I said, I know a bunch of guys and a bunch of kids starting off, they were going and buying these old IDIs as their first diesel truck. And don't get me wrong, you're not going to win no speed. You're not going to be speeding in an IDI, but she's going to pull. I pulled a Farm All H with this thing when it was automatic and naturally aspirated on the car trailer. And a Farm All H is a pretty good sized farm tractor. It's an old international tractor from way back in the day. And she did it. It was slow. I mean, we were pulling hills at like 20 miles an hour, but kept chugging along just like an old 12-valve. That's all it does.
I was really curious about something. I rode in one IDI. It had things done to it with the injection pump and injectors and turbo. But I was always really curious, what does it feel like driving one that wasn't turboed versus the ones that were turboed? Have you been in both of them? Like, what's the driving experience like between the two?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this thing was naturally aspirated. I mean, I drove it when it was automatic. I drove it when it was 5-speed manual. And the C6 was a good transmission, but they were non-overdrive transmissions. So when it was automatic, it was horrible. I mean, it was driving pretty much a gas truck. And I mean, it had torque. I mean, it still pulled. I used to pull car trailer with it, and I used to scrap cars with the thing. I mean, it did it, but it was slow. And putting the manual in it, it gave you a little more extra oomph. It did help. And then now what I tell people is, with the weight, the truck's fully loaded. It's got air compressors and it's got all sorts of tools in it. It's probably comparable to, I would say, a stock OBS 7.3. Not no slouch, but it does the job. I mean, it's been a really, like I said, an all around, just the IDI market, they got the pros and cons like everything else, I guess you want to say, you know?
Yeah, I've always heard guys, when they've talked about IDIs, is they've always wanted the turboed one. And I was always really curious, like, what is the driving feel different? Because I didn't ride in one, or was never around one when it didn't have a turbo. And I think that's just from the questions I've heard, they want those either to find the old kits or to, do a custom one, or they definitely want to turbo them. And I think that's really, it's one of the really cool things about diesel, and especially the older ones, regardless of brand, is, to me, it feels like the older trucks, they don't have a shelf life per se. Like when we think of, what did a early 90s, mid 90s gas truck, how much horsepower did it make? What kind of torque did it make? And then you compare it to what they do now, it's so vastly different. You can see the technology, how it's changing with diesel. Yeah, the technology's changed and the quality of the parts and the precision of them, but you can take these things made in 2023 and breathe new life into something that's older. You can make good power numbers. You can make good torque numbers across a wide range of engines and different trucks and platforms that are out there. And I think that's the part I love about diesel the most is I don't feel like they run out of potential.
Yeah, it seems like the market's always changing. There's always improvements. I mean, you know as much as I do, everything's always how can we make the most power? And then another year from now, hey, we got another injector that's going to increase the horsepower, 50% or something crazy like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It keeps some, I don't know, it makes it so cool to talk about the old ones. I love talking about first gens. I love talking about the old Fords. I've talked a little bit about the 6.2, 6.5s, but I'm always really interested in just what they can do, even though they're 30 plus years old. There's so much that can be done with them.
for sure.
With the truck behind you, is there anything else you plan on changing with it, or is it exactly how you want it, and you're going to keep it that way?
Like I said, this past winter we did truck was off the road from the beginning of January till about June. I mean, we just got it on the road a couple weeks ago. I mean, the bed that was on it was, like I said, it was an old service bed that I bought cheap, and the rust kept coming back. I found this bed that came from down south. We put the bed on. I actually bought a brand new lift gate. There's a brand new lift gate on the back of the truck. I wanted to always do the disc conversion because I had so many issues with the drum brakes in this truck. I was just because of the weight, I'm pretty sure what I'm hauling with this truck. And then putting the heavier transmission in it with the better parking brake. This is exactly what I had envisioned for like the past 4 years of this truck that I wanted it to be at. And I don't want to change anything else on it now. I actually personally don't drive the truck anymore. I drive the 450. My first employee who works for me is going on 3 years. He drives a truck every day. He takes it home. That's one thing with my guys. They got a service truck. They drive them back and forth to work. They take them home every day. I told him last night, I'm like, you need to leave the truck here because I got to clean it. It's got to be on the podcast. It's going to be famous is what it's going to be.
Well, I know a lot of people are going to be interested that are looking for IDIs, and it was really cool to be able to chat with you, about them. It's I know there's a lot of people that own them that are really passionate about it, and they want information, or I don't even know the right words for it. I think before the podcast, I had mentioned that I talk to different enthusiasts and companies all the time, and it's really close which group is the most enthusiastic between Ford, GM, and Ram. And I think I might give the slight edge to the Ford guys, because whether it's a bullnose, brick nose, an IDI, a OBS, a 7.3, 6.0, even 6.4, 6.7s, it's like they're so passionate about their trucks. I've always wanted to just be able to have a guest on that, really loved their IDI, that went through the process of upgrading it and really loved the truck. Like, I didn't want to just do an episode that's really technical or, about this part, that part. Like, I think that the core of it is just they're passionate about that platform, and they want to talk about it. They want to learn about it. They want to tell other people about it as well and say, hey, you don't have to go get this 12 valve. You don't have to go get this, this other vehicle. Like, you can do this. There's a lot of upgrades for it. Look what I did with it. And that's what was so cool about hearing your story with it.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to your podcast you had with Tommy, and he even said that he was getting a bunch of people that were still bringing him IDIs. I mean, there's still, at least in my area and Tommy's area, you drive down the road, you see so many old OBS Ford, you see so many IDIs, you still see so many Power Strokes, like 7.3s. Like, they made thousands of them, and they're out there. You just got to find one that's not all rotted out. Believe me, I've had my fair share of rotted out parts trucks that we scab parts off of, but it was to keep this one alive.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Well, Ford cranked out, they've been cranking out trucks for decades now. There's so many of them that are out there. You just got to find it. You just got to find either the donor, truck, or the part, or what it might be, but they made so many of them. It's just, taking the time.
Yeah, we call this one Franken truck because there's just so many different year truck parts that are all over this whole truck, but it's built how I wanted it. Like I said, it goes down the road, it's reliable. And just the key is with the IDIs that I always tell everybody, gotta have good glow plugs and do the oil and run good oil in them all the time. This truck runs as long as I've owned this truck, and I'm a big Shell Rotella guy. I know you had a couple Shell people on. Everything across the board that I use oil wise is Shell, and that's the key with them.
Yeah, the maintenance side. A lot of the companies and shops we chat with, regardless of how old it is or new it is or what brand it is, it's maintenance,
Yeah.
and more maintenance.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter if it's gas or diesel. I always tell people the key is maintenance with anything. With anything, if it's a truck or a piece of equipment, that's the big key.
Yeah,
that's what you keep the stuff alive.
Well, it was really cool to chat with you. Now, I know there might be someone that has questions about the truck behind you, things that you did, or maybe we touched on some business stuff and they're really interested, or might have some specific questions for you. How can they find your website? How can they find you on Instagram? Reach out to you and ask questions.
I'm pretty much on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and I will give out my website. So the website is DeMarcoEquipmentRepair.com. TikTok is Kev DeMarco73. Instagram is DeMarco_equipment_repair. And Facebook is just Kevin DeMarco. And I'm always on. Anybody can message me if they got any Ford questions or even some Cummins, because I do get into some of the Cummins stuff as well. Not familiar as some of these other guys, but I do get into them a good bit, and I know enough about them, we'll say.
Well, it was really cool to chat with you. Appreciate you reaching out and listening to the podcast. We appreciate that, and any suggestions that you might have for a future episode, let us know, send us a message. But I appreciate you sharing your story about business, about the truck,
Absolutely.
talking with us, about a passion. So I had a great time chatting with you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 23diesel20 for 20% off site-wide. It's a great way to save some money, get some really cool gear. So if you're in the market for a knife for hunting, fishing, EDC, around the job site, throw in a glove box, they've definitely got you covered. They've had a ton of new releases in 2023, and in January we had done an episode with them, and they previewed some of them. But one of their latest releases are the Duralock models, which the opening mechanism on them is really smooth, positive, keeps your fingers away from the blade when you open and close it. And they have a ton of different choices for blade shape, length, different handle designs. So if you're in the market, definitely check them out. The blade's made out of D2 steel, so it's going to be something that serves you for a long time. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters, Tyler Loewen of 23 Diesel, John, J. Cole, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who follow us on social media, subscribe to us on YouTube podcast apps. We appreciate all your support here in year 7 of the Diesel podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you guys want to hear in 2023. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.